family. It's your sister Jocelyn here, and welcome to another episode of Faith on the Journey. If this is your first time tuning in, we welcome you. We are so glad that you are here and want you to know that we're committed to helping you strengthen your faith, heal your heart, and discover a sense of community. And we do so through a variety of ways by connecting you with a team of Christian counselors and offering trauma healing groups and trainings throughout the year. You can learn about these resources and so much more by visiting our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that is faithonthejourney.org. Now, today I'm excited to welcome my sister in Christ who has an amazing testimony, but also wears many hats in terms of helping with the Illinois Special Commission on Geological Cancers, writing for caregiving.com, working with the AIDS Foundation of Chicago. And she's also a 2022 winner of American Public Health Association, the Section Leader Award winner for leadership and community engagement research. She's done a lot. And so I'm excited to welcome to the show Kandis Draw. Thank you so much, Kandis, for being here with us today.
You just literally said I was a jack of all trades.
But it's a beautiful thing. You try to leave your mark on the world as we're called to do. And so I would love to know what's behind all the titles and all the names. If you could just share a little bit about yourself to my audience and kind of what got you into this field.
So my mother died of cancer and ovarian cancer in 2014. And I was one of those people where, you know, how life is just going on normally. And then the next thing you know, bam, another emergency that lasted a good 6, 7 years. So I ended up taking care of her while she was going through that trek. And then two younger kids in the house. That was a whole nother situation with those two. So that's how I started in that particular journey with caregiving. It happened suddenly, just like my sister this time around. Hers happened suddenly.
When you say your sister, what do you mean, Candace?
So my sister recently died at 22 of liver failure, and that happened suddenly. She had spent the night with me, you know, no more than we normally do. We were talking the next day. She had what is known as a hepatic seizure in my apartment. And I didn't know what was going on because she doesn't have a history of seizures. So I was like, what in the world is happening? So she went into the hospital October 31st and she died March 18th, a couple of days after we had moved her to hospice. She had gotten, my sister was, her name was Shantiera. She was adopted by my parents. And she had a transplant at a very young age. She was like 1.5. So, you know, she lived 22 years. And I was hopeful and very, very devastated about the fact that she died so young.
Yeah.
Things I just felt like could have been changed. And, you know, you go back through the shoulda, woulda, couldas, what ifs, you know. Yeah, she went into the hospital October 31st and she didn't leave. Every time we got to a point where, you know, the doctors were like, okay, we're on our way to rehab, something else happens. And it just becomes one thing after another. So, yeah, she died March 18th.
I'm so sorry. My condolences to you and your family. That's very difficult, especially when you said that she was young and being so close to her. I wonder, how did you navigate those weeks and months after her death? What did you do in terms of your grieving process?
During the time that she was there, I did what I thought I had to do was make sure that she felt like she had some type of a support system. I get very creative in certain situations. So the longer that she was there, I would make sure that if I had to work or if I had to do something, I would spend a good amount of time with her before I left the hospital. And then I started, because I got creative. I started a wall. It was on her, you know, the room where you keep your belongings. I started writing messages. Hey, you were asleep when I got here. I was here for a while. Didn't see you. Wake up, you know, so she could see it when she came back. And then I would do that every time I went. So eventually, by the time that she was leaving, the hospital staff followed the same thing. They started doing that, or like the people with transport started doing that. And then, what happens is the sicker you get with the transplant, it starts to affect your brain function. And she would start being confused. And it's like, the TV would be talking. She thinks it's me talking. So she's answering the TV and not me. It was a very hard thing for me to see. Burying your mother's one thing. I mean, your mother dying is one thing, but your kid sister, who you had a part in raising, and then she passes, was kind of like, I started to get even more scared the longer we were in the hospital. Only because when you have autoimmune issues, when you have immunosuppressant issues, other stuff starts to happen. And I got even more, but I put on my advocacy hat because that I just, Reverend Jones, I got a problem. So um, I admit my issues, I got a problem. So when she was in the hospital, I kept telling them, you know, I got indignant with a lot of them. I said, I want for y'all to be sitting here, and if I come back here and this room ain't clean, like it's just gonna be a lot of problems, you know.
Candace, that's important though. I wanted to affirm the fact that when my father was making his transition, that's one of the words of advice that my family members made in terms of you are at the hospital, you're at that nursing home. They need to know that people care about the loved one who is ill so that they stay on their P's and Q's.
Yeah, because see, she's very young. And so what happens is that in that case, does she have a parent or somebody step in to come up here with her? Okay, my mother died. My dad, that's another conversation. Then there was, nobody, that support system. Okay, I know that's critical. Okay, for her, 'cause she's young, which is why when they were talking about where to send her for rehab, when we thought that's what we were going to do, and I'm thinking, well, she's 22. We'll be all right. She'll get up. They were like, oh, well, this is where the insurance said. So I need you to focus. You will not send her nowhere over where y'all trying to send her. I don't need to get attitude with this office. You're going to look from here all the way up to the Evanston border, and I'm not playing. You know what I mean? I had to do that.
Yeah. So, Candace, your sister unfortunately passed. I want to talk about the grief because the advocate, you had that, you knew what to do there. But did you take time to grieve?
Did I take time to grieve? I took some time. I was blessed that I had employers that understood. I told people, my boss, what she needed to know at first because I didn't think that my sister was going to die. So I figured, okay, I can get to this, but when that didn't happen, then I had to say, well, I have to move her to hospice. You know, how often, I have steps I have to do, whatever. So the grief part came. It started when she was transferred to the hospice facility. So I got there the next morning and I would stay with her. I knew this. I was working from the family room in the hospice center. She was getting to the point she wasn't really talking much anymore, not really responding. So I would just sit there, check in on her, talk to the nursing staff. The grief part was suppressed. You're going through it and you have to deal with it. But was I feeling terrible? I was feeling awful. I'm the type, I just keep going. That's how I am. And that can be harmful. By the time she passed Tuesday, that the same week, Tuesday, about 2:30 in the morning. Nobody knew, but I had been going to the funeral homes to see, what the pricing was. I told my father, and I said, okay, well, this is where we are. It was just the most awful feeling in the pit of my heart, my stomach. I mean, I was messed up. So I took a week off to grieve, but I still have moments. Like, I don't know if anybody has been through grief, that, you have flashbacks. For me, I was having insomnia bad to the point I couldn't sleep. Even, you know, melatonin wasn't doing nothing for me for a while. It would relax me, but sleep was not coming. So now, I had a couple of people that, close family that were helping me work through that. Listening to podcasts helped me a lot. And, praying helped me. But the flashbacks is what still plagued me. because I had flashbacks of seeing my mother in end of life and my sister standing wondering what in the world do I do? Was I doing everything I could do? Those type of things. So it takes time.
It does. And for you, all the things that you describe, that comes with grief. It is hard to sleep. It is like spurts where it's just extremely painful. Those reminders are severe.
When I lost my father, the grief that I experienced was paralyzing. Even though I worked in the grief counseling field, I still needed the support of a counselor and a faith community to help me navigate my grief journey. Grief is an uninvited guest in all of our lives. Whether we are struggling with the loss of a relationship, our health, a pet, or the death of a loved one, the grief we feel can be extremely painful. In those moments, we must remember that grief is a valid, healthy response to our loss that needs to be expressed, not denied. But finding a safe space to do it is not easy. This is where Faith on the Journey counseling can help. We put together a free grief resource guide that provides several tools to help you process your grief in a healthy way. In addition, we can help connect you to a Christian grief counselor and plug you into a small group that will pray with you, encourage you, and help you get through this difficult time. We know how difficult this grief journey can be, but you don't have to carry the burden alone. Visit faithonthejourney.org/grief to access your free grief resource guide and connect with an incredible Christian community that will support you.
You mentioned your faith. Can you talk more about how you leaned into that for helping you navigate this time?
Scriptures help during that time. Well, they helped me. Um, the let not your heart be troubled. God is our refuge and strength, a very present help in trouble. You know, Thinking about, how before my sister passed, she had a bout when she had to go to ICU. And I called a friend of the family who was a pastor, who I had them come in and anoint and pray over her. Because my brother and I had been talking, and I said, well, what would mom do? Well, that's what she'd do. So I did that. And then other verses, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody can come to the Father except by through me. And then another, I am the resurrection and the life. Trying to, tell myself, okay, I did everything that I possibly could. Scriptures come in handy when it's life issues, Reverend Jones.
It does, it does, and I think also believing that, right? Because I do know we've been in church for a long time. It sounds like, people they say scriptures, but sometimes they just say it in response just because it's the thing to say. But really believing what the word of God says in those situations and having that be something that gives us hope, I think is important. You going to say something, Candace, to that?
Well, the scriptures, it was good, but it was also the, God has a plan. That's what they tell you, the hospice chaplains, God has a plan. I remember her social worker when she first got there the next morning, my sister was asleep. But as you in the end of life, the sleep gets more longer and it gets more labored. So she said to me, "Are you Candace?" I said, "You're looking at her." And she was like, she said, "You really?" She was like, we've all, we've been talking about this. I said, "You are, but I ain't no superstar." And so she said, "Well, you did what you can, and then this is not your fault." I needed to hear that because for a while I kept saying, "What did I do? Did I do anything wrong? Was I, and that all that just comes back to me." And I realized, like, she was like, "Don't go down that rabbit hole because that will make you even more sick."
And do you wonder, like, have you kind of figured out where those thoughts came from around you thinking that it was your fault?
When I say my fault, I mean, I wondered, Did I dot all my I's? Did I cross all my T's? Did I talk to everybody that I could have? Did I make the right decisions when I was, making decisions for? Did I, and I kept replaying it in my mind. And all that did was make the grief worse because I knew I had. I said, well, and then it wasn't until maybe a couple of days ago, I was thinking I did do everything. I did. And in the grand scheme of things, you have to accept the fact that there are just some things that you're not going to understand. But the hope of God is that in his he has a purpose, he has a plan, and that you know we don't understand his purpose and his plan. It's not like he got to explain nothing to us, but it's just acceptance. And that's the part that I was having a hard time with, acceptance, because Mother's Day was already hard for me. My mother's birthday was already hard for me. Now her death and her birthday are about to just drive me crazy. So, we got to pray Kandis through that because I was just feeling some type of way. But I'm not hard on myself anymore. I used to be. I'm not anymore. And I am grateful that I had a foundation of faith. Them church girl days paid off because, it get real out here, Reverend Jones. It get real out here. So I'm grateful that I was even able to pull scriptures that I knew. Even she was, as I was moving her to hospice, and then I went down this long hallway, and I had to do the yea though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will feel no evil, for you are with me. Like it just, because I felt some days like the heaviness was so bad. And then the guilt comes in. The guilt came when, okay, I had to work. I didn't say anything. I was gone for a day or two. Did I do everything I could? Okay, big sis didn't make it for a couple of days, but did you get the edible arrangement that my friend sent you? And then the nursing staff got to know who I am. That's how it was. I want the nursing staff to know who I was, the charge nurse, every other nurse, whoever you are that walks in this room will know me. That comes with good care, but I'm grateful that I was able to do that.
I wanted to highlight something you said because I think this will resonate with our listeners in terms of that this will happen times in which you feel like, could I've done enough? Could I've done more? Did I do what I was supposed to? I wish I spent more time. And that feeling of guilt, almost like a false feeling of guilt, can paralyze us in our grief process, because sometimes we have done everything possible, and there's nothing that we could have done, but yet we can still feel like we didn't do enough.
Yeah, and what solidified it was, my sister had to go down for a procedure that they thought would have helped and bought some time for her. So when she went down, I remember her saying to me, "Kay, are you gonna stay?" And I said, "Yes. I'm gonna stay." And when she went back or whatever, when I got how they give you that buzzer thing, oh, your loved one's ready, and you look on the screen, and I saw, and the buzzer came awfully quick. So to me, I knew, okay, they couldn't do anything, and I was right. So by the time I went back downstairs and the doctor met us back in her room, I said, he was telling me what happened, whatever, they couldn't do anything. A couple of days after that, she was in bed. She was looking at me. And she told me, she was like, Kay. I said, she calls me Kay. And so I was like, yeah. And she was like, I'm tired, Kay. I just want to rest. I know what that means. That's end of life. That's like enough. I decided that I would start talking to, I had already started talking to the palliative care doctors, but that I was going to start looking up hospices and I was going to see which one. So, and then, it's when every nurse on that floor know who you are and was telling you, you couldn't have done any more, Candace, you couldn't have done any more. When you get to the hospice place and then the social says it really wasn't you, it just was, you just have to accept you. If when you're here to the end, that's what matters, so it's still a struggle for me.
I appreciate your transparency, Candace, around that. And it is difficult. And grief doesn't just fade away overnight. This is a journey, it's a process, and we'll always remember our loved ones. But I am glad that you were an advocate for her. You were there for her all the way into the end. And so, for someone who has experienced something similar as it relates to loss of a sibling or someone who's very dear to them in their family, what words of encouragement would you offer them?
The only thing that really helped me through this situation was a lot of affirmations, a lot of support from close people that knew my parents, knew my mother, and a whole lot of, you know, praying and a whole lot of scriptures. If your Bible has a concordance, you need to, you can look in the back and talk about, and it'll show you what scriptures go with faith. Podcasts that help with faith also help. Soothing music will help. Just asking God for help to keep going.
Absolutely, and God will. God will help you. And Candace, I pray that God continues to be with you as you grieve and you remember, because remembering is hard, and allowing ourselves space to grieve is also hard. We can choose to suppress, we can run from it, we can keep ourselves busy, but we actually do need to allow ourselves space to remember and to feel those emotions, because grief is an expression of the love that we had for the person that we lost. And so, I thank you for being so transparent and sharing your testimony. And I would love for you to share how people can connect with you. And I know there's some great work that you're doing around caregiving. What's the best way for them to follow up?
Well, if you want to read anything that I've written, you can go to caregiving.com, go to the search bar, type in my name, and you will find everything that I've done. Also, I've been over on other podcasts talking about cancer advocacy that I've done. And it's the Illinois State Commission for Gynecological Cancers. And I've talked about how I got on, how that whole thing started, how I got into cancer advocacy and all of that. I've been on Black Cancer, I've been on my cancer story. So I'm out there.
I appreciate you, Candace. Thank you so much for sharing your story and just being real with us about that grief journey. God be with you as you continue to remember and do this important work. Yes, and I thank you all for tuning into today's episode. Hopefully, you were blessed by it. And if you were, you know what to do. Please leave a 5-star review and share this episode with a friend. Also, if you're looking for a Christian counselor who understands the grief journey, understands how trauma can impact our lives, please visit our website at faithonthejourney.org. Again, that's faithonthejourney.org. You can also find out information about our trauma healing trainings and so much more. So that's it for this week. Thank you for tuning in. And until next time, you keep your faith on the journey. I'll see you soon, family.